Welcome, everyone. We're going to get started, start on time, and hopefully end on time. I'm Michelle Simpson. I'm the executive director here at the Boys and Girls Club. Really happy to see people out to meet our candidates for the select board. Just want to tell you a little bit about the Boys and Girls Club, and then tell you a little bit about the evening. We here at the Boys and Girls Club on Flat Street, we are one of 5 clubs in the state of Vermont and one of 4,700 across the country on military bases, Native American reservations, in urban areas, in rural areas, and everything in between. Boys and Girls Clubs serve all kids. And here at our club, we serve kids kindergarten through 12th grade. We have a K through 5 program, after school program at the Retreat Farm. And here on Flat Street, we're dedicated to serving 6th grade and up and providing enrichment programming for youth. We really focus on, just anybody in here who's ever been a parent, it takes a lot of time, energy, and money to drive your kid around for after-school activities. Here at the club, we're sort of generalists, and we consolidate all kinds of offerings that you might find around town. So, for example, the New England Center for Circus Arts, New England Youth Theater, River Gallery School, the Brattleboro Museum, the Brattleboro Food Co-op. All of these youth-serving organizations send their experts to this club to make accessing their program even easier. We're within walking distance to many schools and housing developments, and we also provide transportation daily from our local schools. We provide healthy snacks and meals every day, Monday through Friday, and we're really glad to see our community here, and I know there's a lot of supporters in here of the club, so thanks again very much for being here. Just some housekeeping. The bathrooms are up the stairs and to the left. I am going to introduce our moderator for tonight, Tracy John. Tracy, many of you probably know her. She's a native of Brattleboro. Most of you know her as the general manager at the Vermont Country Deli. So if she can do that, she definitely can moderate this event. And she was there for 20 years. Recently, she just began a new position at the Richards Group as a retirement plan consultant, a return to a past career that she held for many years. Tracy is a past president of the Brattleboro Area Chamber of Commerce and currently sits on the board of the Brattleboro Savings and Loan and the Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation. She's a graduate of Bryant College, and we're very grateful to her that she is here. I'm going to hand it over to her in just a minute. Actually, I'll hand it over to you now, and you can introduce the candidates and introduce the protocols. There you go. Thank you.
I don't even need the microphone, but I'll use it anyway. So thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for asking me to be here. Thank you, Boys and Girls Club. I think first I will go through kind of the ground rules and then introduce our candidates. So just to be clear, this isn't a debate, it's just a forum. So some questions and everyone gets a chance to answer them. We ask that people here on the stage speaking don't interrupt each other. Everyone will get a chance to answer the questions. If you have a question, you can address or you need to speak to the audience, or you can speak to me, but preferably not each other. To the folks in the audience, if you'd like to applaud, you certainly can, but please wait until the end. We'll be keeping the answers to 2 minutes, and I believe that Renee will be keeping time on that, and we'll hold up a sign that says you have 30 seconds left, which is very handy. Let's see. I'll be asking each candidate questions about the town. There are 3 questions tonight, and at the end, the audience will have a chance to ask questions as well, and every candidate will have an option to answer those questions for you.
Let's see. So, I'm not even going to use this because I think I can speak loud now. Probably easier that way.
Is that going to be okay for TV?
All right, you're gonna... Okay. Or not.
Better? Okay, so tonight, we have 6 folks here up on the stage, and I'll kind of break through it this way. So there are 2 people running for the 3-year seat candidate. We have Liz McLoughlin, who's here and is currently on the select board. Also, Dick DeGray, who cannot be here tonight, but we do have a statement that we'll be reading from him later. For the 1-year seat, we have 5 people here on the stage running for 2 spots. And I'm going to go this way. So Peter Case, who many of you know, he also goes by Fish. You can call him that. We have Jess Gelter, who is also currently on the select board. Let's see, Sam Stevens, and coming on down the line, Franz Reichsman, thank you. Liz and Spoon Agave. Did I get everybody? Okay, great. All right. So my plan is to start with one question, head down one way, and then sort of return it back the other way with the second question. Sounds like that's the standard format here. So question 1, we're ready. Just down the road from us is the town-owned transportation center, a revenue generator for the town of Brattleboro. This building has become a symbol of downtown crime, homelessness, and drug use. Just this week, a deceased body was discovered in the alleyway by the transportation building. What actions would you take, support, or budget for to maintain and revitalize this space? I'm going to start with Peter.
I mean, that's sort of a low-hanging fruit kind of question, right? It's something that this club, I know, have seen members showing up to select board members about upgrading the camera system, putting in better lights, increasing patrolling for all that. I don't know what the hang-up is on getting that done, but those are definitely things that would be on the top of my priority list. I mean, that thing is sitting in the center of our town and is slowly becoming this thing that defines this town. And this town is better than what goes on there. We all know that. But there is a lot of aggression that comes out of there. It's not making people feel safe. So by increasing signage, by increasing cameras, by increasing lights, by patrolling, whether it's, obviously some sort of police patrol is the first thing that needs to happen, some kind of an increased presence there. I'm not sure what can be done on a civic level, but there might be something that we can install there to just increase the amount of eyes on what is going on there, just to lower the people feeling like it's aggressive, because it really is. It is a nice part of our town. Unfortunately, it has been pretty hijacked as of late, and I really do see most of the people who complain about downtown aggressions and things like that. It is stemming from our transportation center, and I don't think we want that. So those would be some of the easy things that we can do, of course, and then working with the police department to find out what more we could be doing.
You came in under time. That's great. All right, I don't. So here we go. So first, Tracy, I want to say I appreciate your framing of this, and I just want to take a moment for us all to acknowledge the tragedy that just happened a few hundred yards from the front door here. There is a lot of pain and hurt and despair and sadness in Brattleboro. And I think we're really lucky to have places like the Boys and Girls Club, which bring people together, bring our kids together, give them something to do and something to care about. And so I just first want to celebrate what you do here. It's amazing. Then also I want to talk about, what the town is potentially able to do. We have this community safety fund. There is money to support programming around revitalization, and I think that that's really important to look at how we use that. The select board has also been discussing repairs and maintenance that can be addressed in the transportation center, including lighting or security cameras, making sure they're working. And then also, I think there's work that we can do with the police department, like Fish said, in partnership to make sure that folks feel safe. Because I know when this question came up, I had a physical reaction to it, and I felt the fear rising in me as well. And so I think there's important work that we need to do so that folks feel like the space is safe. Because when I went on my ride along with the police department this summer, they actually assured me most physical crime, most crime that causes bodily harm happens between people that know each other in this town. It's not the stuff that happens on the street or in the parking garage. It's not that sort of violence. That violence is happening in homes and between friends.
Well, I'm very much in support of cameras, both replacing the ones currently in the transportation center and also expanding that into the area around the building. Really, wherever the police chief would see fit, I would defer to the police on that. There's been some talk of a police substation in the area of the transportation center, which I think would also be a good idea, provided we have sufficient personnel and resources to make that useful. Oh, right.
And if anyone needs me to repeat the question, I'm happy to, but it seems like we're on a roll.
Well, go ahead, repeat the question.
Okay, I will.
please.
And thank you, Jess, for how you addressed that. I'm sorry I didn't in the same way. So I'll repeat the question. Just down the road from us is the town-owned transportation center, a revenue generator for the town of Brattleboro. This building has become a symbol of downtown crime, homelessness, and drug use. Just this week, a deceased body was discovered in the alleyway by the transportation building. What actions would you take, support, or budget for to maintain and revitalize this space?
Thank you. So if someone showed up, say, to a forum like this at the Boys and Girls Club, I would think they should expect that to be the first question that came up because it's been such an important topic of discussion in the community and also specifically at the Selectboard meetings where just about every meeting we hear something about this and where the tenor of the comments is often one of impatience that little has happened to address the issue so far. Having said that, of course, it is a complicated issue. There's, what to do. There's a number of possibilities. The cameras clearly are an important part. I think there's widespread agreement on that, including within the town administration. So I certainly expect things to happen on that. A little bit of history, and you might question, well, why is there a parking garage there in the first place? And that happened in the 1980s, late 1980s. There was a bond vote that came up before town meeting to build a parking deck on the High Grove lot, and that was rejected. And the town then formed a committee to study, well, what should we do about parking in town? And supporting parking is important to the town as a commercial center. So the committee was called the Brattleboro Parking System Advisory Committee, and it decided, with me supporting it, to put the parking garage on the Bradley parking lot, which has been there ever since. So I do take it a little bit personally that it's deteriorated and been somewhat neglected in recent years. I think the ideas that have come up are all reasonable, but what we also need is a discussion of the budgetary aspects of it. I think the first step is to decide that we're going to have a great parking garage. That's got to be the framework. It doesn't have to be someplace that troubles us all the time. I think we can decide, let's make it really good.
Thank you. Liz, are you okay?
Thank you, Tracy.
Sure.
Well, there's a lot going on at the transportation center. I also had a ride along with the police department. That was the first stop. And I was informed about what goes on at the transportation center. We got out and talked to some of the people who spend time there. There's a couple things I want to say. First, I want to say that I support a fully staffed police force. And some people think that we need to defund the police force in order to pay for mental health services. I think we can do both. but I do think that we need both mental health services and police in Brattleboro. And one of the important things about mental health services is, that we do, as Jessica pointed out, have this fund for public safety. And there are programs in Burlington that use mental health providers to go on calls. But often there's legislative fixes that need to be done. For example, if people commit crimes who are suffering from mental illness, there's no treatment facility for them. And so we need to make sure that, if we have robust mental health and we have a robust police department, that we can properly care for both aspects of our society. And I think we all need to support each other in this process. Thank you.
Spoon, do you like me to reread the question, or you feel comfortable?
No, I don't think you need to read the question. Well, I think we do need to, of course, get back to a full complement in the police department and have the area patrolled more as needed. Lights may or may not help. Ultimately, the only thing that helps is to find employment for these people, for all of us, to find housing, to do all of the things that we need to do so that everybody in our community has some hope, does not have a reason to hang out and do nothing, does not have would prefer not to be stoned, but would like to be gainfully employed and enjoying a life like most of us can, although fewer and fewer of us can. I also ask, on the more practical side, why are they hanging out in the transportation center? Why there? There's shelter. It's out of the rain. There's a bathroom. There's some warm spaces. It's near the carryout. It's the center of town where it's easy to congregate. So if we don't want them there, we should start to talk about providing some other space for them to hang out, that they will. But that's not the answer to the question. That just moves them from here to there. And the numbers keep growing, and that is the problem. So that's one thing that this town needs to start doing, and that I would recommend. We start needing to keep a general progress indicator, have a list of measurements in this town, so that every single year we can see the changes in the numbers of homelessness, of poverty, of all the other things, medical care, health care, et cetera.
Thank you. Sorry, I was letting you finish your thought. Your 2 minutes were up. Thank you for your response. And I'm actually going to start with you for question number 2, and we'll travel back the other way through the table. Question number 2 asks, economic vitality, creating a thriving town, and workforce development are critical functions of the Select Board. How will you support young people that want to or currently live, work, and play in Brattleboro, who are facing the harsh realities of increased crime, lack of middle-class housing, and political extremism that sometimes paralyzes this town? I'm happy to read it again if it's kind of a lot going on.
Well, if people are going to stay in town, they're going to start with, let's understand, the kids have been heading off the farm for 200 years. This is a small town, and all of our kids are not going to stay here, and they never have. But we need work for all those who want to stay here, and for new people to show up, and there will be more people showing up. And so we need to create good jobs and productive jobs and interesting things to do. We have an organization, a development organization, BDCC. They've been working for 65 years and haven't done squat. And I think that probably it's their approach that has failed. And the approach I would recommend, because I've seen this work everywhere, I won't say everywhere in the world, but very often all around the world, the one type of enterprise that works where there is really a powerful economic need are cooperatives. And a cooperative economic situation, scene, own consumer co-ops, worker co-ops, et cetera, or just worker-owned businesses, to give young people the chance to work together to create for themselves a niche and to be productive.
Thank you. Liz, would you like me to read the question again? Okay, that's fine. Economic vitality, creating a thriving town, and workforce development are critical functions of the Select Board. How will you support young people that currently or want to live, work, and play in Brattleboro, who are facing the harsh realities of increased crime, lack of middle-class housing, and political extremism that sometimes paralyzes this town?
Thank you. You're welcome. Number one is housing, and we need more housing. And Brattleboro had a study recently that says we need 500 new housing units in all income levels. And there are a variety of state funding programs, and there will be more state funding programs with the federal COVID ARPA spending. One of them is there's already right now rehabilitation funds and new construction to add 1 or 2 more units to an existing multifamily dwelling. And there's always been the availability of adding an additional dwelling unit within a single family home. So there's a lot of things that can be done, and I think we can encourage that. The town planning department has stripped away zoning controls to make it as easy as possible to develop and redevelop housing. We should not be demonizing landlords. We should be helping landlords throw out existing drug dealers. The town has also provided, in the past 12 years, the Select Board has granted non-taxpayer-based funding called program income that leveraged housing to the value of $31 million. So that's for low-income housing. Worker housing is a particular focus of state activity. The jobs are there. The jobs are not filled because there's no place for people to live. And I think that, once all the other problems are solved, everyone will be happy.
Thank you. Franz, would you like me to repeat the question? I'm happy to.
No, thanks.
Okay.
I think I got it. So economic vitality, I would say that has been a focus of town government for quite some time. I don't think this is a new issue for people in elective office or seeking elective office to address. On the other hand, it's not always clear what municipal government can do to directly stimulate economic activity. Rather, I think it's very important not to get in the way of people who want to bring businesses here or create new businesses here. I'm not sure. Certainly, I would say Brattleboro does not have a business-friendly reputation. Whether that's deserved or undeserved, I can't really say. I do have some friends who started a prepared food business in town and found that they had to move it to Keene because they weren't getting sufficient help from aspects of our town government. I haven't looked into that in depth, but it's the kind of thing that once you hear it, say that really needs to be addressed. Even if it was just a one-off kind of thing that didn't work out, you still don't want information like that circulating. You want to directly talk about it, and make sure that people who are in the business world also feel comfortable with our town. Having said that, there's all different segments of the business community. There's the arts community, which is very important to us, and all kinds of service businesses. It'd be nice to have more manufacturing type businesses, but that's a big ask. So this is not an area where I'm a particular expert, but I think it is the business of town government to be as helpful as possible in establishing and maintaining a good business environment.
Wonderful. Thank you. Sam, you have a microphone. Yes. I'm happy to read the question again if you'd like. I know it's fairly lengthy.
I think I'm set.
Okay.
So the crux of my platform is making Brattleboro more livable and more attractive for young people to stay or come to post-high school or post-college. I think that very much begins with housing. The select board is not probably going to provide the entirety of that solution. I think there's incentives we can offer. There's things we can work on. Cost of living and taxes are a thing we can affect, perhaps just by being more selective about what projects we pursue when. Guess I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Jess, would you like me to read it again? I'm happy to.
Yes,
Okay.
please.
I will. Okay. Economic vitality, creating a thriving town, and workforce development are critical functions of the select board. How will you support young people that currently or want to live, work, and play in Brattleboro who are facing the harsh realities of increased crime, lack of middle-class housing, and political extremism that sometimes paralyze this town?
Thank you. So I moved back to Brattleboro when I was a 23-year-old single mom. And it was hard. It was hard because childcare was expensive. It was hard because I didn't have a long professional record to get a job that would support my family. It was hard because I got to move in with my parents and my grandparents. That was fun. But what made my journey and my success in this town possible was the way that folks stepped up into mentorship and friendship and leadership, including some select board members. So I want to say that as a member of the community, I think select board members, of course, have a role to utilize their power and their presence to support others, new folks to town, young folks. And then also there are ways within the systems that we have, like the Economic Development Fund Liz spoke about, which folks don't know about. And I think that now we've invested in having a communications coordinator. We're going to see a lot more applications to that fund. And we're going to see a lot more applications to the Apartments and Homes Fund. We have $5,000 grants to create apartments and homes. There are a lot of resources that the town has that I think folks don't know about. And I think one of the great things that we've done is, ooh, yeah. So having this new position of a communications coordinator to let folks know that there are some great resources they can take advantage of and take initiative and support the young folks and other folks that want to be a part of this community and be invested here just as much as they do.
I mean, that's a multi-layered question, but I will tell you that if you want to keep kids here, you should probably start somewhere in the high school with installing things like more emphasis on trades. I was having a conversation with a electrician the other day who was having difficulty hiring people that are licensed electricians, and he told me that the ratio of an apprentice electrician and a licensed electrician here in the state of Vermont is 1-to-1, and in New Hampshire it's 2-to-1. I mean, that would solve some quick issues about keeping people here in the state, is taking a look at things like that. Now, I know that's more of a legislative thing, but that is something I believe the select board can kick up kick up the chain and make stuff happen if we're making enough noise about it. Again, it goes back to how Brattleboro is being defined right now as a dangerous town, and so that just gives people built-in excuses to leave when we need, and we have a severe messaging problem here, because we are a really good community of caring people. I mean, everybody who shows up here tonight, who is sitting up here, cares deeply about this community, and we need to infuse that in our messaging and change the way we're approaching things that will keep our kids here in this community, in the places that we grew up. Our moderator is a really good example of somebody who stuck around and built a life here and is doing some really good in this town. I've served with on many committees with her, and know firsthand how it is possible to retain somebody here in this town if you give them a reason to stay. So we need to give people a reason to stay. Affordable housing is also one of those reasons. 500 houses is what's needed to bring this town level. That doesn't even give us growth potential. That just brings us, that certifies the need that we have today. So all of those things working in collaboration with one another will, I think, get us to where we need to be. But it's not a quick fix, but I'm up to the task.
Thank you. I'm going to start with you, Pete, for the last question. This is question 3. And it's kind of come up a little bit already here. As we know, housing is a big issue in this town, and there is a charter amendment on the ballot for, quote, just cause evictions. Voters will decide on an amendment to the town charter. As proposed, landlords would be prevented from evicting tenants without cause. Rent increases would be capped at 12%. This includes not renewing a tenant lease. What is your position on just cause evictions?
Woo! Here we go. All right. No, this is one I have been trying to unpack. So I'm going to need about 5 minutes on this one. And going back and forth and trying to really sort this one out. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? I can tell you from firsthand experience, not so much firsthand, but knowing somebody firsthand who has had a problem tenant living within their domicile, and the landlord having a hard time removing that person, because after all, they're a landlord and they're not a detective. They can't find the proof. They can't cite the reasons that you need to evict somebody who is ruining everybody's right to quiet enjoyment. So that's a problem, right? But on the other hand, you've got, again, this 3 to 5% of the population that seems to be just foiling it up for the rest of us, who are evicting people without cause so that they can capitalize on more money for their rent. And I know that happened a couple of times during COVID, right at the height. So where do I stand on it? I guess no landlord really wants to evict a good tenant, I think is where I'm at. So if you've got a good tenant, I don't think you're trying to evict that person. I think you know what you have. So I'm not really in favor of the no cause eviction as it's written and limiting what a landlord can charge for a rent. And it's a really difficult one to unpack, but I guess at the end of the day, I am not really seeing a point to make this a part of the town charter.
Wonderful. Thank you. Jess, would you like me to repeat the question? I'm happy to.
Sure, yes.
Okay. As we know, housing is a big issue in this town, and there's a charter amendment on the ballot for, quote, just cause evictions. Voters will decide on an amendment to the town charter. As proposed, landlords would be prevented from evicting tenants without cause. Rent increases would be capped at 12%. This includes not renewing a tenant lease. What is your position on just cause evictions?
I got another story.
Okay.
So, I did eventually move out of my parents' house and into a great apartment. It even had a pool. It was pretty amazing. I lived there for 7 years. Paid my rent regularly, and then one fall I got a letter. Got a letter from my landlord saying we needed to move out in 60 days. He was going to sell the house. So, it sucks. It sucks to make a home, even if you don't own it, to make a home and then to be told you can't have that home anymore. It should be noted that we don't make laws for people who follow the rules, for people who are doing it right. We make laws to protect people from the people who take advantage and who do it wrong. And we've seen folks getting evicted in terrible situations, particularly recently at Westgate. And so I think this isn't a select board issue right now. It's a personal issue for your personal voting. And me personally, my heart is telling me I need to tell Montpelier that they need to think differently about how they balance their priorities of housing stability and property rights. And that maybe landlords, particularly ones that do it wrong, need to utilize the system of the eviction process and the legal system so that folks are given a chance to stay in a place that they feel is their home.
That might be me. Thank you. Sam, are you comfortable with this question? Would you like me to repeat it again?
I think I've got it. That was a hard act to follow, though. I would be open to some form of charter amendment of this type. I don't think that just cause eviction is really what we need. It's a little bit unbalanced. Something perhaps a little softer would be more appropriate. It just feels like all too often our response to this kind of conflict is to come down excessively hard on landlords, and creating a situation where you're unable or somewhat restricted in removing someone from property you own is as much a dangerous precedent to set as is being on the other end of that.
Would you like me to repeat the question, Franz?
No, thank you.
Okay.
Well, as is so often the case in politics and in life, we have competing interests in answering this question. And they're, just listening to the stories, there's stories on both sides. So there's the story of the person who has to leave someplace that they consider home, and made home as just so eloquently described. And then there's other stories of the landlord who wants to have a really good place for his tenants to live, and there's a problem, and it can be very difficult to solve that problem, especially if you get involved in the legal system and the courts. It can take, I'm listening to landlords telling these stories, and it can take a couple of years to get somebody out of your apartment. So the stories cut both ways, and I don't think you can just go by the stories. I think it would be nice to have some actual data about how often people's rents have been raised unreasonably, how often there's been a problem tenant who you can't get rid of. But I don't know where you would get that data from. So that's not really the answer. The answer for me is that I am not going to vote myself for this amendment to the charter. I have two reasons. One is the potential unintended consequences on the housing supply and willingness of people to be landlords and be good landlords. I don't think there's a way to say what those effects would be, but I worry that there might be some pretty negative unintended consequences of this. The other reason I'm not going to support this is that I don't think the charter is the right place for this to be. The charter is too inflexible. It kind of carves in stone whatever you put in there, very hard to change later. If we're going to make some type of laws or guidelines for rental properties, it should be done through the regular statutes of the town, the ordinances through the select board. So I'm going to vote no on this one.
Thank you.
So I first want to reiterate the caveat that Jess gave, saying that this was her personal opinion, because the select board received this petition and presented a public hearing, and our own opinions were not given at the select board meeting because the select board does not want to influence the vote. On a personal basis, I do not intend to vote for this measure. I think that landlords need to be supported, and that this measure would negate every existing rental contract in the town. And I think that there needs to be more housing, more rental housing, and therefore more landlords creating more units. And this would discourage landlords from creating new units because of the problems associated with certain bad apples. So there are many reasons why the system that we have now isn't perfect, but it allows people to better regulate the apartment dwellings that they own and care for and provide, not just for themselves, but for their other tenants.
Thank you, Liz.
There's an old saying, ask a person what they mean by what they say, and 9 times out of 10, they will get silent or angry. What I mean to say here is that as I listen to these responses and all that I have heard about this issue, I realize, much like the other issues that have preceded it, we're having heartfelt, serious discussions without any information. No hard facts. It's almost all anecdotal. If you listen to the hearings that were held, largely they just boiled down to the landlord saying, I own this property. I am entitled to make all of the profits I can. The other side of it is that I just have a job or not. I can't control my wages. My rents are going up to $1,500 and $2,000 a month, and I'm earning $15 an hour. And I can't control that. Housing, I firmly believe, is a human right. We have to solve this problem. Whether it means building houses, rent control, I'm not sure what. It would have to be a community discussion. But everybody needs a home, and this is a problem until everybody has a home.
Thank you, Spoon. Thank you, everybody. Next up, I'm going to turn the microphone to Michelle, who's going to read a statement from Dick DeGray, who could not be here tonight.
Thanks, everybody up there. That was really wonderful. And we are very much on schedule. So there's going to be plenty of time for questions from the audience. Dick DeGray, one of the candidates, is unable to be here tonight. We were not able to accommodate him to Zoom him in just because of our own technological issues. So, and for the purposes of BCTV as well. So we gave him the opportunity to send a statement. He will get his statement read, or at least 6 minutes of it, as everybody else up here has just gotten 6 minutes for the questions. He also did not have these questions in advance either. So here I go. Good evening. My name is Richard Dick DeGray. As it will show on the ballot for the 3-year select board seat, I couldn't use the flower guy. I am sorry I can't be with you this evening, so Michelle has provided me an opportunity to have a brief statement read. Before I start, I would like to thank the Boys and Girls Club for hosting this forum here this evening. For those who don't know, I served on the board from 2006 to 2013, and then from 2015 to 2016. For several of those years, I was either the vice chair or the chair of the board. In 2011, I presided over the board. In my opinion, it was the worst years in my 40 years of living in Brattleboro. We had the Brooks House fire in April. 60 apartments were lost, along with several retail shops. If it weren't for the outstanding work of the chief and the Brattleboro Fire Department, the whole block could have been lost. That summer, we also had 2 homicides. Then in late August, Hurricane Irene hit. The damage in the Whetstone corridor started on Route 9 to Flat Street, was devastating to homes and businesses alike. The reason I bring this up is that I saw our community come together like no other time. In each instance, I saw compassion, I saw love, I saw giving monetarily. People doing whatever they had to do to assist others. It was a beautiful thing to see and be a part of. I also saw our administration, our employees going way beyond any job description to assist others. Oh. Apologies, sorry. Let's see. Okay. Employees going way beyond any job description to assist others. I have always loved Brattleboro, but that year made me so proud to be a resident of this community. Now we come to 2023. Figuring out our EMS service is critical. I do believe if rescue is not one of our providers, we must repair our relationship between the municipality and that organization. When time is of the essence, we need rescue to be our mutual aid partner. I would hate to see anyone lose their life because our mutual aid partner was coming from Keene or Greenfield, and we had a valuable resource right here. I am on the record as not supporting a substation for the police department in the transportation center. I believe our money would be better spent on having an officer walking the beat, old school, along with hiring a social worker who could be on the street assisting those in need. Several years ago, when I was on the board, we did have a social worker working with the police department. I believe it was grant funded. There was also a couple of minor issues that I believe can be resolved moving forward if we choose to go in that direction. The board has procrastinated on the use of the Community Safety Fund. We are a few months shy of 2 years and nothing has been done. That is totally unacceptable. It has $300,000 sitting in a fund with the potential of $50,000 more added if the budget passes at the town meeting. I think one of the uses of that fund would be to hire a social worker. I support Chief Hardy in giving her more tools to deal with situations that are not all crime related. But the police department has to respond to go a long way. I also support cameras downtown and any other place that Chief Hardy believes they are needed. Cameras don't stop crimes, but they do help solve crimes. Given all the break-ins that happened downtown this summer, we need all the tools we can to help solve them. Being on the street at 3 a.m., you get to see a lot of activity. It has given me a perspective that no other board member has. The board in November was supportive of replacing the cameras in the transportation center. They were deaf on the request of cameras on the street. With inflation hovering around 7%, the board's budgetary increase was 3.9%. That is the highest in the past 5 years. The board added a new position, a communications director. We are a town of 12,000. I hardly think we need a communications director. The Trident report talked about the critical need for additional firemen. What is our priority here? Chief Howard spoke at the February 7th meeting talking about his shifts. We're running with 6 people, not good. Housing continues to be a pressing issue in our community. I'm sorry, I didn't press it. It's just going off on itself. Maybe it's on a timer. Apologies. Housing continues to be a pressing issue in our community. I believe that we should be adding money to the housing assistance program and really promoting it. We should not just look at Wyndham Housing Trust to solve our housing issues. The town has a multitude of properties it owns. Not all are buildable lots, but I believe several are. Let's get those out of the public domain. I do support a public bathroom in the Harmony lot. As my time is getting short, I will leave you with this. Early voting has started. Please support me in my bid to regain a seat on the Brattleboro Select Board. Win or lose, I love our community. I know how good we can be. Thank you. Wow, that was really good timing. I know, that's so interesting. So now it's time to open up questions to the audience.
That was Dick's thing.
Oh, well, I do have a voice for theater, so I don't know if that will work for you. But it is time to ask questions of the audience. So if anybody would like to come up to the microphone, please do. Same format. All of the candidates will get 2 minutes if they wish to respond to your question.
All right. So yes, please come to the microphone, state your name, and ask your 1 minute question. My notes say that we're going to focus on issues, not personalities. All the candidates will have an opportunity to answer the question. Again, 2 minutes, please. We'll time you. And if there's really any big fights that happen, I'll certainly step in if I can. Okay. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Stacy Blackadar. I graduated from BUHS in 2013, and my first job was in this building. I worked there for about 4 or 5 years with Ricky Davidson. I'm a long-term resident. I live up by the ski jump. I'm going to school full-time at Smith College, and I commute, so I was a little late. But my question is, I'm not trying to insult anyone in our audience, but our median age range is a little on the older side compared to fellow college students and people in their 20s. And I was wondering what this board, because it's not, young people aren't here because they don't care about this town. Young people care about this town a lot. They're seeing their friends pushed out of their homes. They're seeing job opportunities dry up for them. I have friends who work in the humanities in Brattleboro, and they make $17 an hour and can't afford to find a place for their children or find a place to live or find childcare. And a lot of people in this area are working nights and they don't have the availability to come to these kind of events. So what are we doing together to invest in our next generation so that we can all have happy, healthy lives here and grow families and make Brattleboro stronger? Thank you. I know it's kind of like the first question, but
it's all right. Liz is going to volunteer.
Thanks for that question. Hello? Okay. Stacy.
Hi.
Thank you. It's an interesting question. And one of the things that Brattleboro does, which I think is great, is that we partner with people. We partner with the state, with our legislators, with nonprofits such as the Boys and Girls Club, a myriad of groups to provide services for everybody in town. We're not the experts on childcare, for example. And so, our Human Service Committee gives money to childcare providers. But at the same time, the bulk of that money, we have this once in a lifetime opportunity from coming out of the pandemic to fund childcare at the state level. And they're working right now to have that childcare bill. And, they're working right now to provide for more housing. So this is really a critical juncture for all of us to be paying attention to what the state is doing. And we at the Select Board, and I very strongly feel that we need to coordinate our programs and our spending to what the state is doing to make sure that we're all covered with the needs that we all have. And I think that you can see on a federal level that the federal government is transforming to be giving money for a safety net that we've never had in 40 years since Ronald Reagan. So this is the type of thinking that we all need, and we all need to work together to, there's nothing I want more than my children to move to this town. So that's what we all want. You know, we all want to be families together. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone? Okay. I'm not an AV person. Okay, go ahead, Spoon.
Actually, it's the generation behind me that is the largest part of the population right now, the 40s and 50-year-olds, and younger. One question is, I would actually at first throw it back to you. Why don't young people participate?
I found out about this event at 2:00 this afternoon, and I am the only person in my circle that knew that this was happening. So maybe
So it sounds so, okay, so there's a question of why aren't younger people paying more attention? And
That's
let me speak. I don't read, that's sort of a rhetorical question. I was on the school board for a couple of years, and one of the things I discovered is that civics is basically not taught anymore in our schools. That there was a time in a report that I read of our schools in 1948 when they listed the objectives of our educational system. Civics, being a good citizen, was number one. By 1976, in a somewhat similar report, that vanished from the list altogether. We became concerned with science and engineering, etc. So young people basically don't have an idea of how their community, their politics, and how anything works. All they go on, I don't know what they go on, quite frankly. Period.
Thank you for coming. Let's start with that. All right. Thank you for being engaged. I'm a big fan of collaborating, having conversations, and communication. And I get that probably a role on the select board for a young person, Sam excluded. He's kind of the anomaly. But, you know, here's a guy who is stepping up to have his voice heard and to be heard. And I think that that is a big part of how we keep our younger people engaged and give them reasons to stay. Also, a lot of the other issues that are coming up with, you know, the inability to earn a decent living, the inability, if you should have children, to take care of those children, and the access to childcare that you can trust is also another issue. But for me, it all comes down to a multitude of conversations. Now, I ran for school board last year. I did not win that bid. But before I did that, I made sure that I went and talked to every single high school and elementary school principal within the district. And I actually did find out that they do teach civics here at Brattleboro Union High School. So that is something that is actually happening. Just to find out like where the rubber hits the road. And if a school board is making decisions and handing it down to a high school administrator, that is no different than making decisions and expecting you to navigate it. So I would look to have these open communications with you and to help, not operating in a vacuum at all, to figure out how we can make it all work to retain people like you who want to be in this community.
I'm passing it.
Okay. Thank you for asking. Issue that's near and dear to my heart for some reason, you know. So I think accommodating younger people starts with housing. It starts with being a more financially livable community. There's work we can do with housing. I would like to see the jobs around here pay a little bit better. That's outside of our purview, but we can make some attempts to lower the cost of living proportionate to that. It's always difficult if that means not spending on a certain project sometimes or cutting some service. So maybe that does mean tightening our belts in some way, but I think that is worth doing. And thank you for being a participating member of the young generation.
All right, yeah. So young people get involved. And it's our job as leaders and potential leaders to make the space for that. It's from encouraging folks to feel like they could be included in town committees, and encouraging them to participate in things like this. Oh my God, thank you so much for coming. My teenagers wouldn't come.
I'm 27, so almost.
Young voices are important because the decisions that we make, they have long-term effects. The decisions, Franz, you were talking about around the parking garage, like that's 20, 30 years later now. New generations are coming into leadership and power and having to deal with it. So it's really important that all ages of voices are considered in the conversations. And that's why I'm really excited that the town has supported a young member of the Energy Committee and projects to change our monument at the Common. The town supported the changes that folks in high school were angling for. And it was really amazing. And I think it's not just teenagers, of course, but young adults as well that need to have space made for them. And one of the things that's being done this year is we're providing childcare at representative town meeting so that folks with young kids can come and participate for the 8, 10, 12-hour meeting that it's going to be, and they'll at least have childcare coverage for that.
Yeah, my turn. So it sounds to me like, well, first of all, it's very hard to come up with a 2-minute answer to this issue. It's really more of a conversation, with back and forth and, just sort of jumping in and saying, well, here's the answer is pretty unrealistic. But it sounds to me like there's two somewhat separate issues here that you've raised. One is, can young people live here and make a living and afford to be here, et cetera? And the other is, can young people get more involved in the affairs of the town itself? And, to get involved in the affairs of the town, first thing you got to do is live here. So it does, there's some overlap, but I didn't grow up here. I first came to Brattleboro when I was 20 years old, and I liked it. And I really decided that, coming back again and again over the years, that this is where I wanted to live. It took me 15 years to accomplish that. Finished, being elsewhere, going to school a couple times around, and then getting to the point where I could move back here, get a job, buy a house, do all that stuff. But it took a while to do it. It can be done. Once I got back here, I got involved right away, and I think that's the easier answer. If you want to be involved in town affairs in Brattleboro, it is wide open. Now, politics is tough. It's difficult to make your mind up. It really has taken me a long time on a lot of issues to know where I stand. And that makes it frustrating for people. And, it's maybe a little hard to get involved. But this town, the governance of this town, I think is wide open. Sam, in case anybody hasn't noticed, is awesome. And just that he's stepping right up and saying, here I am, let's go, I think is terrific. And I think other young people could do the same thing. You have to kind of figure that out, though.
Thank you for your answers.
Thank you, everyone. Anybody else from the audience with a question? Yeah, come on up. Take your time. That's okay. I think we're behind. We're ahead of schedule. Go ahead.
Good evening, folks. I'm Karen Tyler. I'm a member of the Board of Trustees of the Brooks Memorial Library. Spoon mentioned that there need to be other places in town other than the transportation center for people to feel that they can be warm and dry and safe. I'm not sure if most people are aware of the extent to which the library has become one of those spaces. Libraries nationally, public libraries, seem to be stepping into the role of what settlement houses were in a previous generation. A safe place, a safe, welcoming place
for people to come seeking resources for all kinds of needs. Our wonderful library staff is overwhelmed and has occasionally felt that their personal safety was at risk because of the volume and intensity of those needs. Dick DeGray had mentioned, and I think actually Spoon you may have as well, the possibility of a town social worker. We've been in, our board has been in conversation with various entities in the community about following up on the community safety studies recommendations for meeting people's needs in a way that isn't connected with the police force. And we've been talking about being part of a sort of a collaboration to support having a social worker. Some people refer to them as community navigators, resource coordinators, who would be available throughout the community. It's hard for me to imagine one person meeting that need. I'm envisioning a team. But I'm wondering if you might speak to what role the select board might play in supporting that effort.
Liz, if you'd like to take that one. Great, thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Good question. I am aware because I've talked to Star, and I have friends on the library board as well. And I know that the select board has not shirked our responsibility for the Community Safety Fund, that we are raring to go with our brand new town manager to address the situation. We have these community safety funds. I think the community safety report was very negative about the idea of a social worker, but I think that many people in town have come around to seeing the utility of having maybe more than one social worker associated with the police or not associated with the police, associated with the fire department or on some sort of a team. And what the Burlington has just initiated something called the Cahoots model, where social workers and mental health workers go out in teams together. And I think that that's a very viable model. But I think we at the select board are looking forward to hearing these ideas from town staff and from the community to see what works best and what we can try to have social workers and have that work and meet the needs of our people. And, you know, I've seen people wait in the town offices for the library to open, and then for the library to open and then go over to the drop-in center. So it is certainly a phenomenon that, you know, we need to offer more help to people in our community.
Anyone like to take the bronze? Right, bronze is. Thank you.
Calling me, teach. So, what was the question? Oh yeah, the library. Well, I'm kind of in Liz's corner on this, I think. I read a really great article a couple weeks ago in the New Yorker magazine about what they're doing in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and how there are social workers working with the police, but not necessarily right alongside the police, but they go out into the community. You know, they're not waiting for people to come to them with a problem. They're out there, they're talking to whoever they encounter, they're offering resources, they're, you know, helping identify what the responses are available to the needs that people have already identified for themselves. And to me, that seems like a really great model. That and they go out again and again. You know, if you're a person on the street and the social worker comes around and offers you whatever resource they think might be helpful, and you don't want it, okay, fine. There's no judgment involved. They may give you a card, a contact information, and then they'll be back the next day and see if you change your mind. So it's this real developing relationship, and it sounds terrific. And I don't know how much it costs, and I don't know how many social workers we could afford to have in Brattleboro. But to me, that's the kind of model where the social workers and the police working together to address problems with lawlessness, and also to address problems that could help prevent lawlessness in some cases. So what does that have to do with the library? I don't know, but I love the library. Thank you.
Thank you, Spoon.
Again, everything, we're mostly talking about just immediate Band-Aid type of remedies, responses. And in fact, the problem just keeps getting worse. And it is, and all the indications are saying that that's what is happening. I was, years ago, not many years ago, I was really kind of startled to see that we had 50 homeless people. Now there's 250. So we can make 250 beds, but next week there might be 500. So again, it comes down to that although we need to respond to immediate needs, and maybe social worker will help a little bit, but at the same time, not later, but right now, we also have to be talking about where are people going to find work and get incomes and be able to take care of themselves. Every time it's easy to talk about, we need this and we need that. Then you sit down with the budget and you say, well, this is what it's going to cost. Well, how are you going to pay for it? There is only one way to pay for it. That's through taxes. There is no other way. If you choose not to raise your taxes, you're not going to do anything to improve the situation. And so, but we need to sit down as a community and talk about that. We need to talk about, as a community, our future. What do we think is going to happen? Is the Messiah coming? I doubt it. We are a community. All we have are ourselves. And we need to sit down and talk about, and this is where the select board could be helpful.
Thank you, Spoon.
Is enabling that discussion.
Thank you. Who'd like to speak next? Jess?
It's back on. I love the library. Does anybody else here love the library? Yeah, right? And the library is for everyone. The library is for everyone. And that's what makes it such a beautiful space. I think you have really identified a clear problem and a clear need. And that's an excellent time to come to the select board and say, we want a thing to happen. The select board doesn't always have all the answers and doesn't always know all the problems. And this was something that came up a couple of weeks ago in a library report, I think, that there was a need potentially for a social worker partner. So I think that it's the select board's role to empower the staff and the committees that run our town institutions to do the work that they need to make people well-served and safe. And speaking of safety, I think as we are assessing how the town responds to safety situations and emergency situations, particularly with our EMS questions and potential transitions that we're going through, I think that this is a possibility of being able to address some emergency mental health situations as we consider what the transition looks like to emergency medical services, rather than embedding a social worker in the police department, which was the thing in the community safety review that the community had a problem with, I think, because it was connected with punitive or incarceration outcomes. I think it could be a really great opportunity to look at how we respond to mental health crises as we look at how we transition our EMS systems. And I just want to celebrate the library for being great partners with the homeless peer support community and hosting an event with them last December. Thank you.
Sam or Pete? Which way are we going? No. You're up.
With the understanding that mental illness is nothing that is illegal or against the law, and I think that if you're having a mental health crisis, it would be nice for this town to provide a service in which you could seek that help and get the help that you need. And if the library is a place where we can install somebody to get that help, I love that idea. I love that idea more than funding a $425,000 outdoor bathroom project. I would like to see something like that. I think is more fitting for what this town represents. Right now, the town of Brattleboro is in this very reactive state because things have slipped. I would love for us to get back to a proactive state, and I think something like what you're suggesting is something that should be considered, should be acted on. And again, I don't like making a decision inside of a vacuum. If this town decides to elect me into a one-year seat, I want to listen to them. I want to listen to what they want, not just what I want. It's not about me. It's about serving this community, something that I've done for 30 plus years since I've lived here, and do so gladly. So yeah, I think having that sort of a resource in a place where you're absolutely right, and thank you for bringing it to the attention of everybody here, is a really big gathering place for a lot of people and solves a lot of problems.
Take a shot at it. Take a swing at it.
I think it. Is this on?
It might not be. It's batteries.
Low battery.
I'm getting up my batteries.
There we go. Yeah. I think it's a very important issue. In an ideal world, I'd definitely like to see at least a small team.
It's dying.
I'd like to see.
Here, have one of mine.
There we go.
Hey.
In theory, I'd love to see even a team of social workers. I think it would be perhaps a good idea to have one associated with each branch of the town. So perhaps the police would have a corresponding social worker. If the library has need of one, they could have one, etc. I don't necessarily know what that would look like, and I would defer to the expertise of anyone who's interested in that issue.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Ivan Hennessy. I came here to meet the candidates, and as part of that, I'm going to ask two very uncomfortable questions. And as a show of goodwill, I'm going to answer them after I ask. Housing and crime are both big issues in tonight's conversation. So, how many housing units do each of you own? Total. Your own house, any place in the world. Have you ever been arrested? I own 0 housing units. I have never been arrested. Thank you.
Okay, Pete?
Was that an actual question?
Those are your questions.
So I own one home and I've never been arrested. Did I pass?
I also now own my home. Delightful outcome. Thanks to the Wyndham Windsor Housing Trust and the USDA programs that support low-income homeowners to purchase their first homes. I highly recommend connecting with them if you are curious about that. And I have never been arrested, but I have been coached on how to be arrested because I've attended lots of protests, and it seemed like a good skill to have.
I am not the owner of my living space. I have never been arrested.
I own my home on Chestnut Street, just out of interest for some. It used to be Sowers Market. It's been my house for the past 35 years. It has 2 apartments in it, and the other apartment is occupied by my sister. So that's my housing situation. And I once got a ticket for having a fire on the beach after 8 o'clock in New York City, and I had to go in front of the judge, and I had to pay a fine. It's not arrested, but I think you can get the sense that I really am a kind of a tough dude. Thank you.
My husband and I in the Brattleboro Savings and Loan own my home, and I've never been arrested.
I worked in a prison. I worked in the Ohio State Penitentiary, one of the worst maximum security penitentiaries in the country. I understand prisons. And living in a country that has more people in prison than the rest of the world combined.
Hi, I'm Cassandra Holloway. I am a resident of Brattleboro, but I also am the director of Building a Positive Community. I wanted to let you all know that we have a youth council that started this year. It was developed by youth, 20 youth created it. A lot of them are on the youth council now. We have a dozen. We can have up to 20, ages 11 to 21. They meet here, thanks to the club, once a month, and they also meet on Zoom in committees. I wanted to let you know that they're focused on healthy and safe homes for young people. They're focused on Brattleboro community safety, and they are focused on shared power in schools, youth resilience and well-being, and also career shadowing. So I wanted to just let you know, some of them, when we started, we were part of this thing called Quality Youth Development. This town is actually the third town in the nation, though it started in Vermont. So it's to meet certain benchmarks to say we care about youth. And we had youth working on that. And they met with Peter Elwell, they met with Ian Goodnow, and I really want to see their voices. The part of their goal is to get information from other youth and bring it to decision makers. And I guess my question to you is to like what Jess said, getting them into onto committees, having them have, Django Grace got credit in his class for working on the energy committee. So my question to you all is, how do you bring more youth voice into the decisions that get made in this town? Thank you.
You talk to them. You invite them. You invite yourself into it. I mean, I would love to attend. I would love to attend a meeting if that's even appropriate. If they want somebody that old in on those meetings, I would understand if they said no.
That's their job. That's their role, is to talk to you.
All right, so that's what I want to do. I mean, that's my whole entire thing. That is my life, listening to people tell their stories, so that I have a better understanding on how they connect to everything else. How it all connects is a big part of that. I think the select board can sometimes lose sight of that. Sometimes they're very engaged with that. But I think it's very easy to lose sight of that. So maybe having somebody, even a rotating thing from a select board, attend that meeting so that we're having conversations. And if it's not possible, then to figure out a way to form that committee and then just get that report to somebody on the select board, whether it's a designated person or if it cycles through all five, which I think would be wonderful if everybody had an understanding about what the, if you will, the gripes, for lack of a better term, are and how they're impacting the youth, and how we can help that be less stressful for them. Again, it just comes back to communication, collaboration, and just having those conversations.
They also have suggestions in addition to gripes, just to be clear.
Well, no, but I think that comes out in the conversation. If they have suggestions, that writing those things down and talking those things through. Look, I'm an okay with somebody bringing a complaint as long as that person has a few different ways to solve it too. Because I don't profess to have all the answers. I just got one of these. I got it.
I'd concur with Fish that the best way is communication, to emphasize, yes, you can get involved. Here's some ways. I also would like to say, whether or not I'm elected, I'd love to help out with this group in any way I can.
Awesome.
Oh, do you? Okay, I'll go and then we'll pass it down. All right. Thank you so much for coming, and thank you for the work that you do. BAPC has changed a lot. I used to work at this organization, and I had the delightful opportunity of creating a campaign called The Blunt Truth about reducing adolescent marijuana use in Brattleboro. So it's great to see how the organization has changed over the years. I definitely want to echo what Fish said about listening and making sure voices are heard. One story I heard recently was that in the city of Keene, they have a kid mayor that comes in and sits up at the desk with city council and is not just showing up at the meetings and being listened to and doing the public participation thing, but actually has a seat of power in the conversation, which is so amazing and beautiful. And even if it's a meeting or two a year, I think it would be delightful to really get a different perspective sitting up there on that board. So yes. And I know as we're talking about safety in our community, I mean, our high school has had 2 lockdowns since the beginning of this calendar year. 2 lockdowns. Safety is an issue, a huge issue for students at the high school and teenagers in our community. And I think that, you know, as we're looking at and talking about the Community Safety Fund, one of the priorities in the Community Safety Review is saying, what if we hear from people who are in the most impacted communities? And I think with the level of threat and danger and unsafety that teenagers are feeling right now at their school, I think it's really important to include them in the conversation. So when that comes up on the agenda, I'm going to give you a call.
Please do.
There we go. One of the things, well, first of all, I had the pleasure a year ago of being at the founding meeting when I was chair of the select board, and I was very impressed, very well-spoken and earnest people who I would be happy to work with. The other thing that comes to mind is that when Chief Hardy came to the select board this December, I believe it was, and she talked about the crime in Brattleboro, and we're all basically talking about property crime here tonight in the downtown and so forth. A major part of police business is crimes against women and children. And we cannot dismiss the seriousness of that. And I think with the isolation of the pandemic, that was only aggravated. And we just need to understand that how important mentoring is and how important youth being part of the community is to prevent crimes like that. And we just all need to understand that hierarchy of crime, and that the work that you're doing and the Boys and Girls Club are doing is so important to get our youth in a safe place.
I approach this as a humanist, as a person who firmly believes in human rights. And about all I want to say is that, what's not on? Oh, okay. And about all I want to say is that as a member of the board, I will be solving problems with that first and foremost in my mind, that every single citizen of this town needs health care, housing, food, jobs, a decent way of life. And anything that comes before that board that will aid in these aims are things that I will support.
Well, I absolutely welcome the participation in town government and other community structures by young people. I think it's very important. I think getting them started while they're young is really great. I'll go anecdotal here and say that when I was 14 years old, I took some cardboard and made a sign that said, "Young Citizens for Johnson Humphrey," and I took that sign down to the local candy store on 129th Street, and I stood there and I collected $2.41, which I sent off to the Johnson campaign for president that year. I'm pretty sure that's the main reason he won by such a landslide. Although it's hard to document that, so I won't push it too hard. But anyway, yeah, young people, politics, go, go, go. However, I'm also going to swim the other way here a little bit and say that I think a real problem in Brattleboro is lack of involvement by people in all age groups and all social relations and structures, etc. It grieves me to see empty seats at representative town meeting that have to be filled by the caucus process. I took a glance at the ballot today, and as in recent years, there's not enough people running for representative town meeting to make the decisions, to create the budget. All that stuff. We need people. It'd be great if they're young people. It'd also be great if they're old people. I really wish that more people would get involved and make a difference in our town.
Thank you, everybody. And thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. And thank you, everyone, for bearing with me and all of our weird little technical... Oh, you did have a question, Lisa. I wasn't sure if you were just standing in the back. Did you, Michelle, you had said we were done, but I don't... Yeah, this can be the last. Okay, this is our last question. I apologize.
This up. Hi, I'm Lisa. I'm the board chair of the Boys and Girls Club and honored to be hosting this event tonight. I'm also the chair of the BUHS Leadership Council, where we do talk about safety a lot. And in terms of safety, tonight I heard many times over and over again that social workers are a big solution. And I just want to say that there is an extreme shortage of social workers. And I just want to make sure that all of you know that, and anyone who's sitting on the select board knows that, and you're making it a priority. At the high school, we've been looking for a social worker all year. We have one for 800 students. So I just wonder if there's any alternatives. What's the alternative plan besides a social worker?
The Cahoots model that I talked about in Burlington, that's a social worker, but it's primarily mental health workers.
I think there's a shortage of those too.
I'm sure there's a shortage of everything.
I mean, we can't even find therapists for children.
Yes, difficult to find pediatricians, from what I understand as well. Anyway, we're going to look, and you know, there's a shortage of police officers, and we're trying to hire them, and there's a shortage of firemen, and we're trying to hire them. So come to Brattleboro. There's good jobs.
So for any shortage of a crucial type of a person or role like that, I'm always a big fan of programs reminiscent of Growing Nurses, where we provide resources and training and incentive for people who might be interested in that career path to take that up in this area.
Yes. Yes. And I think it's also important to explore peer support models. And it's really important to have folks who have the lived experience of the folks they're serving, so they can approach it differently with different sort of sourced empathy in their lived experience. So I think that peer support models are really great and could be a nice alternative to that if the town or state funding or grants are available to support that.
So I think a lot of what we talked about all kind of interlocks in a way, right? We're in this weird time where people just don't want to seem to work anymore, and that's an actual thing that there are brains way bigger than mine trying to unpack it, and they can't. I think, Brattleboro had a story to tell 10 years ago. It has a much different story to tell right now. I think moving forward, we have to tell a different story, maybe one that backs it up a little bit and makes it more of an attractive place to come, selling a lifestyle that is afforded by everybody who lives here, who enjoys the outdoors, who enjoys a safe community, which we don't really have one right now. So I think if we start to tell that story now, none of this is quick fix stuff. I'm sorry. So, but if we start to tell that story now and start to take actions to make our community safer, and to do things like that, we can attract people in. And of course, having adequate and affordable housing is going to be a big part of that. You can accept a job, but if you've got no place to live, then you can't take the job. So that's going to be a big problem. So that's all weaving together. But yeah, I think if we begin to change how Brattleboro is viewed and how we can pay a little bit more for our fire departments and our police departments and attract those people into our community, I think that is one way that we solve it. And I'll just close my statement out saying, really, nobody had one single rescue question? Not one?
Spoon, would you like to go next, and then we'll end with Franz?
We have a decision-making process or a meeting process that we all experience all the time. It's the modus operandi in this town, in which we we name a subject or a problem, and then we stand up one after the other and we just say whatever we want, and half of which isn't true, but there's never any time to ask anybody if it's true. And this goes on until the chair of the meeting says we're running out of time, or a person in the meeting says, I've had enough. I call the question. So we all vote. One person votes one way more. There's, half go one way, but there's one more the other way. So it's over. We decided. We're finished. We walk out. And with a process like this, which we have been led to believe is the essence of democracy and actually is the furthest thing from it, we go on forever running in circles and never really making any real productive decisions. By productive, I mean those decisions in which the vast majority of a community or a population really believe in. And there are meeting processes out there that can, and this is vitally important, I believe, to greatly increase participation and much in being able to bring out information much better and being able to make informed decisions. And this is the essence of democracy, being able to make informed decisions. And that is what I would try to bring to this town.
Thank you. Franz, would you like to answer Lisa's question? That would be lovely. Thank you.
Thank you. So how can the town of Brattleboro find more hireable social workers? Very difficult for the town to do that, I think. Certainly we can't create them. I suppose we could offer more money to hire them, and don't offer competitive wages, offer super competitive wages, and then we can find good people that way. That won't solve the problem on a larger scale, though. I would say to solve the problem on a larger scale, this is going well beyond what the Brattleboro Selectboard can do, but I think what we need to do is rescind the Trump tax cuts and tax the wealthy and the corporations at an appropriate rate, and use that money to provide the needs of people sitting here tonight and of our communities. How do we go about that? Well, start talking about it. Maybe we can exert a little upward pressure. It's maybe a long-term goal. But I think a lot of what we talked about tonight have implications for the distribution of wealth in this country. I'm not sure we can solve all the problems directly. I just throw that idea out there that if you're going to be involved in politics, you young folk, find a way to make a difference. Thank you.
I think it's just, no, it's not dead. Okay. Well, thank you. I'm going to turn the floor over to Michelle Simpson.
Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you so much to all of our candidates.
Oh.
I really appreciate it. And thank you to everyone who's here tonight. Wow, it's really simple. Just to remind everybody, town elections are Tuesday, March 7th, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. at the American Legion, and early voting is open. Thanks again for coming. Yes.
I spoke to our town clerk today. She said they're sending out the ballots of people who've requested absentee ballots, but early voting won't start until next week.
Early voting won't start until next week. Got that on the record. Okay, thanks so much. We started on time. We just about ended on time, and I wish that for whomever wins in this election, that the whole select board meetings will start on time and end earlier than they usually do.